Welcome gallery staff and councillors to the November ordinary meeting. I'll open the meeting with an acknowledgement of country. Richmond Valley Council recognises the people of the Bundjalung Nations as custodians and traditional owners of this land, and we value and appreciate the continual culture, connections to lands, their living culture and their unique role in the life of this region in the past, present and future. Mr General Manager, could you read the prayer, please?
Dear Lord, we meet to serve our Richmond Valley community, to use our resources wisely and well, to represent all members of our community fairly, to make decisions that promote the common good. We recognise our responsibility to the past and the future, and the rights and needs of both individuals and community. As trusted servants, we seek blessings on our deliberations and on our efforts here today. May we act wisely and well. Amen.
Amen. We have public access item 3, and today we have Ms Deborah Johnson, who will be speaking and addressing the meeting on items 12.1, 12.2, 14.1, 14.3 and 19.5. Welcome, Deborah. When you're ready, please. Deborah, you'll have a bell at 4 minutes and then to give a minute warning, and then 5 minutes, okay? So when you're ready, and please start. Thank you.
Flood mitigation asset protecting the mid and lower Richmond, Bungawalbin, Swan Bay, New Italy and Woodburn. No major repairs were needed to the 6.5 kilometre levee until 2017, when the highway upgrade dammed the Bungawalbin catchment, increasing the height, volume and velocity of water in the river. Rouse County Council was unable to sufficiently repair the levee, which broke through again in the same spot in 2021 and again in 2022. Now the entire Bungawalbin levee needs attention, with around 1.3 kilometres in an emergency state and requiring immediate attention. Rouse are delegated by Richmond Valley Council to be responsible for the construction and replacement of flood mitigation infrastructure. Therefore, they are accountable to Richmond Valley Council. It is Richmond Valley Council's responsibility to advocate for the community. Item 7B 1.1 of your Operational Plan 2022-23 states you will support the Northern Rivers Resilience Initiative and advocate for solutions to mitigate future flood impacts. There is a clear miscommunication across the government agencies. Public Works engineers attended the site with Rouse and advised verbally they use a 1-to-1 levee to bench ratio when undergoing a quick field assessment. According to that definition, there is 1.3 kilometres in a dangerous state. They have since denied any general standard. However, the New South Wales Urban Flood Levy Interim Flood Confidence Limit Guide 2019 by Public Works Advisory clearly shows there is. Rouse have advised, quote, the Bungawalbin levee is not eligible for the further New South Wales government funding available for projects to improve the resilience of flood levees, as this funding is targeted at urban levees only. I cannot find a clear definition for an urban levee other than a description stating it protects the community. The Bungawalbin levee protects homes, farmlands, businesses from Bungawalbin through Swan Bay and the southern side of the Woodburn village. The Confidence Limit Guide shows levees similar to the Bungawalbin levee in construction and location. It is very clear the Bungawalbin levee protects the community and villages and should be included in the urban funding. The SES have registered their concern about the effect the broken levee will have on those townships. Every assessment criteria in the Confidence Limit Guide considers Bungawalbin levee major, no confidence and in an emergency state. Worst case scenario. It has previously failed in the last 5 years, 3 times. It has significant erosion and clay core missing, numerous large trees collapsing the levee, Rouse have claimed Fisheries will not let them remove any native trees in order to undertake any repair works. Fisheries have advised me they have not been contacted by Rouse in relation to the Bunga levy and, quote, there are no requirements for approval under the Fisheries Management Act 1994 for vegetation removal above the level of the top of the natural creek bank. There needs to be a collaborative approach between the agencies, and Richmond Valley Council needs to advocate for the community and demand this. Rouse have also stated the levee adjacent to the river has been returned to pre-flood height. The section referred to has not been touched because the contractors deemed it too dangerous. In some places, there is up to a 1.5 metre height difference. Rouse applied for $90,000 to undertake a study of just one small 50-metre section of the levee, when there is 1.3 kilometres in the same condition. The study should cover the entirety of it. Rouse have been unable to repair the levee properly since 2017. Since the 2022 floods, it is in a much worse state. They are unable to understand the importance of the Bunga levee to the mid-Richmond communities. They are not doing their due diligence, working on incorrect information, and are therefore unable to effectively apply for the emergency and betterment funding from the state and federal governments. I ask you to make an official funding request to Northern Rivers Reconstruction Commission to allocate funding for the Bunga levee and remove the urban requirement. Funding priority needs to be given to already existing flood mitigation assets. The New South Wales Infrastructure Betterment Fund specifically includes levies, not discriminating between urban and rural. I request you make public any ongoing reports from the NRRC and Rouse to allow transparency. In the meantime, what is Plan B for the mid and lower Richmond communities? The levee is broken. There is extreme risk to life. Thank you.
So that's your 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you.
Councillor, got any questions? Councillor
Yeah,
Keane.
so obviously you've had some conversations with Rouse. Have you considered going to one of the Rouse meetings? I assume they have public access.
Same as here, the item
Yeah.
has to be on the agenda.
Okay.
So I have applied to Philip Rudd and Andrew Logan and Brenda Ford to have a meeting with me, but I'm yet to receive a response.
And you mentioned that the SES have expressed concerns. Yeah, what's that in relation to?
So the Woodburn Unit Commander Ashley Slapp has said, was specifically in relation to the Bunga levee, that it was built to protect lives and property. With the breach in the levee wall and many weak spots in the levee wall, there will always be the risk to life and property, as well as isolating the residents. And this is a concern to the SES. Number 1 concern is life, 2 is medical, 3 isolates the community, and 4 food and supplies. And they've said that this will also change our flood triggers with water coming in at lower than levee walls. So for the last one that we had a month ago, they put an evacuation order in place 1.5 metres lower than they normally would. And it just got to just below that, so they didn't have to activate that, but that was their plan.
Other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 4, apologies. We have one apology from Councillor Cornish. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please?
Mr Mayor.
Councillor Morrissey.
I'll second.
Councillor Hayes. Put that motion. All those in favour? Carried. Confirmation of the minutes. I'm sorry. We have a presentation by Mr Adam Bradfield, our auditor, who will speak on the item that's later in the agenda. So I'd like to come forward, please, Adam, on our financial statements. When you're ready, welcome.
Just waiting for the presentation to be on the screen.
No worries. is she? No. This is not in public. No. But you can ring the bell.
Is this right?
By the end of it, we might only wish you did have 4 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Councillors, for having me along this evening to present to you on the audit of the financial report for 2022. It's been quite a challenging year, not only for your council but the sector as a whole, and in particular many areas of the state with natural disasters coming out of a COVID environment that we were impacted in part of this financial year. Working remotely is, something that has become business as usual in many respects, and the sector as a whole continues to respond to those challenges. The Auditor General released her report on the results of the 2021 financial audits this year, and I just want to touch on some of the key matters coming out of that report that councillors may be interested in. One of those was in relation to the recognition of rural firefighting equipment in relation to RFS assets. Now, there's certainly some debate across the sector in relation to councils recognising those. The Auditor General is certainly of the view that councils control those assets and councils should be recognising those. Last year there were 68 councils who did not record rural firefighting equipment. Here at Richmond Valley, Council has been recognising those assets historically for quite some time. Pleasing to note that there's no issues in that regard for your council. The Auditor General also recommended to the Office of Local Government to mandatorily introduce early close procedures as part of the preparation of the audit process each year by 30th of April 2023. So what that means is councils doing things early throughout the audit process prior to year end, in particular engagement of valuers for comprehensive revaluations, position papers on key issues and technical issues, preparation of pro forma financial statements and reports prior to the end of the year, just to take out, I guess, the pressure points that occur in sort of September and October, particularly for Council's finance team in pulling all that information together. And it's certainly considered best practice and is widely used in other agencies across the state. So I think that is certainly something that we would encourage as well. In relation to Richmond Valley Council, you're quite progressed in that area already. Engagement of valuers, and there's always going to be challenges with valuers and their schedules and timetables and natural disasters and all those types of things, but there's certainly been effort and intent there to resolve those issues prior to the end of the year. There's probably some opportunities for, I think, the Council's newly established ARIC committee to be involved in, I guess, the oversight of that process and visibility and input into the financial statement and reporting preparation process. So we'll work with that committee as part of next year's audit. The Auditor General also has been touching on high-risk issues in relation to asset management and asset management practices across the sector. Now, that is nothing new. There's always challenges in relation to assets and asset management generally, given the nature of the local government sector. Also, cybersecurity and information technology, IT general controls, continues to be a theme in the Auditor General's report to Parliament, and even more so prevalent given the developments over the last few months that I'm sure we are all aware of. So if you haven't had an opportunity to read the report to Parliament, I would certainly encourage you to do that. Moving forward, in relation to the annual work program over the next few years, the Auditor-General has released her program of work. There's certainly a focus on integrity of systems and processes for government agencies, and I guess the prioritisation of assessing the quality and impartiality of advice to government-related entities and the related risks and impacts of that. There's certainly a theme on cybersecurity as well, given what we've just discussed, and that's certainly reflective in the annual plan. The annual work program in relation to specific planned audits and reports for the local government sector, as you can see on the screen, this year the Auditor-General will be releasing her report on the results of the 2022 financial statement audit process. So I would expect to see similar findings and themes from the prior year, and I'll touch on that in a moment. The effectiveness of financial management and governance in a couple of councils. So there's been some councils who have been selected to, I guess, review that process and provide recommendations to other councils within the sector as a whole. And so there's certainly an opportunity to review those findings and reflect on anything that may be implemented from a best practice point of view in relation to your council. We mentioned cybersecurity before. There's a specific review in relation to local government and cybersecurity. The coastal management reforms and that performance audit, I mean, that might be something that interests you, given you have coastal management issues within your council. Moving forward, in relation to future audits, there'll be some audits on road asset maintenance, managing code of conduct, climate risks in relation to assets and services. So there might be some interesting findings in relation to that. And as you can see, those other audits mentioned on the screen. The theme in relation to this year's report to Parliament will focus on largely what I've discussed previously. It'll also touch on key management letter themes. So the audit management letter is a document that the auditor writes to council and makes observations in relation to internal controls, and that goes through council's ARIC committee, and there's discussion on that. There'll be key themes around similar issues that have been presented across the sector, and I'd encourage council to review that and reflect on any best practice recommendations. There'll also be a follow-up on issues that have been raised previously in previous management letters and reports, and I guess the status of implementation of those and the progress of those issues, and as well as cybersecurity, IT general controls and asset management and valuations. The report on the conduct of the audit, that is the document in relation to our report to councillors. We've completed our audit of the general purpose and special purpose financial statements and the special schedules contained within those. Certainly pleased to report that we have issued a clean audit opinion, or an unqualified audit opinion. So that's a pleasing result for council. There was a prior period error noted in the special purpose financial statements in relation to some found assets for the water and sewer fund. That's nothing uncommon within the sector and other councils. In relation to your specific matter, there was a delay in council being advised what those assets were, so they simply couldn't be recorded in that respect. So they were brought on to the books this year. The financial statements at note G5-1 have 6 key performance ratios. So they're the OLG performance indicators that get reported in the financial statements, and all councils are consistently measured on those. Your council met 4 out of the 6 of those OLG industry benchmarks. There was 2 that weren't met, and that was the operating performance ratio and the own source operating revenue ratio. Now, given the year that we've had with the impact upon natural disasters, that's certainly not a surprise, and in particular the constraints on relevant expenditure and the additional grant funds that you've received would certainly contribute to that matter. Over the page, in relation to the actual result for the year, we've had a net operating result, or a profit, of $20 million. That's an increase of $10 million from the prior year. But the result before capital grants and contributions is a loss of 5.6 compared to a loss of 2.4 in the prior year. There was just some key financial metrics. There was an IPART approved rate peg increase to general rates revenue of 5.5% this year. That went through our audit process, and we didn't note any issues in that regard. There was an increase of $16.5 million in relation to grants recognised for natural disasters, and I've already noted the impact upon that particular matter for your financial statements this year. There was an increase of financial assistance grants, sporting grounds, parks and facilities, and other specific grants and contributions. So you would have seen that come through in your regular financial reporting. Materials and services expenditure increased by $17 million, and that's largely as a result of what we've just talked about in relation to the challenges in the year that Council has had. Looking at Council's overall cash position, so at 30 June 2022, Council had total cash and investments of $78.7 million. That's up from $61.8 million in the prior year. Now, obviously, most of that is externally restricted, so it's tied to a grant agreement or in relation to the Local Government Act and the specific funds that money is used to invest in and spend on. The unrestricted current ratio was met from the performance indicators, which indicates that Council can cover its expenses in the immediate term. So that's quite pleasing to see. All in all, pretty pleasing result for Council. It was a challenging year. It was a challenging year for councils. Certainly a challenging year for us as auditors. It was a collaborative team effort, and I'd certainly like to thank the General Manager and his staff, in particular Ryan and Hayley, who's also here. It was a great team effort to get it over the line in the end, so thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? No? Most probably, with our ratios, there, as you mentioned, that there's a couple there due to the natural disasters. They're struggling, but how would you rate all the other ones? So I noticed our assets is up high. Asset renewals.
Yeah. I don't have your renewals number in front of me, Mr. Mayor, but yeah, if you've met the performance indicators from the industry standard, then you're achieving your outcomes that you should be for the other ratios.
Yeah, the asset maintenance ratio, it seems pretty strong, and to me that's heading in the right direction for our future.
That's right.
So. Any other questions, speakers? Well, thank you very much for your... Oh, sorry. Yes, Mr. General Manager.
Yeah, just wanted to acknowledge the work that Adam's done in getting this through on time. We did have the opportunity of an extension, those councils affected by floods, but we've always been keen to stick to the normal timeframe. So just want to acknowledge Adam and his team at Thomas, Noble and Russell in achieving that and keeping on track and obviously a good audit process. So thank you and thanks to the team.
Thanks, Adam, and have a safe trip home.
Thank you.
Councillors, item 5, there's no mayoral minute. Item 6, confirmation of the minutes. 6.1 of the ordinary meeting held on 18th of October. Could I get a 22 mover, please?
Move that way.
Councillor Humphries, second Councillor Morrissey. Put that motion, is the accuracy? No disputes on the accuracy? Put that motion, all those in favour? Carried. And also of the Internal Audit and Risk Committee over on page number 6.2. Could I get a mover there, please? Councillor Humphries, seconder. Councillor Deegan. No concerns with the accuracy? Put that, all those in favour, carried. Now, is there any matters arising out of that? Either of those meetings? No? We'll move on then. Item 8, declarations of interest. Mr General Manager, do you have any declarations?
Yes, I've received 2. One from yourself as Mayor in the matter item 14.1, flood recovery update as a pecuniary interest. And I've also received one from our Director, Organisational Services, Ryan Gator, in the same item, 14.1, flood recovery update, and that is listed as a pecuniary interest.
Does any other councillors or staff have any further declarations? Thank you. Petitions nil, notice of motion nil. On page 7, my mayoral's report, I'll move that. Can I get a seconder, please?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Morrissey. Any questions arising out of that report?
Yes, Mr Mayor. 14th of October, the White Cane Day Walk. Could you just give a bit of an overview?
Yeah,
of
the
that,
White Cane Day is an annual event by visually impaired people. They actually invite myself and sometimes the General Manager, but this time neither of us could attend early, and you walk through the street and they put these glasses on it which limits your sighting. But I had another appointment and so did the General Manager. But I did contact them and I caught up with them at their luncheon and spent about half an hour with them, and it was a good day. They understood that why I couldn't be there. As you can see, the meeting before that, I was in Lismore, and they were very delighted when I told them that Council had received the funding at the meeting before for the crossings, the 3 major crossings in Walker Street. So they were very, very, I can't think of the word, help me, tactile. Yeah, so they're in place. They were very, very pleased because they've been asking for that for a few years. So it was a very fortunate time to go and visit them. So it was good. Any other questions?
Yes, Mr Mayor. On the 21st of October, the Corocai Pod Village opening. Just wondering if there's been any updates since that opening and how it's working out.
It was a very good opening. The Minister for Emergency Services, Steph Cook, was there, and we spoke to some of the locals, and one gentleman from Corocai, he'd been to all around the area in temporary accommodation, out as far as Glen Innes, back to Kyogle, and down there, and he just felt like, he said, I'm home, I've come home. So, and I I think there was 20 had moved in around, 20 pods were open, I think. There's about 40 people there, but I don't know how many's been open since then. But it's, when do you think, you know, we're all, something has to happen, and I'm pleased it did, and would have liked to be quicker, but when you see the infrastructure and the roads and the footpaths and the electricity and, yeah, water, and you start to realise the enormity of getting a site from clear fill ground up to that stage, it's pretty impressive. And I know everybody wants things to happen like the click of a finger, but you know, you've got planning, and it just, it's great. It really is. So that'll become a little community, and I wish them well. And as soon as the other one's open, and I think Evans Head's on target. I'm not quite sure when, but it's more caravans on sites. So. But maybe the staff can give us a bigger upgrade, because I don't really know what's happened since then. Only what I read in a few reports, and we all get those.
So just to, I suppose, some figures on these villages, which is in a later report, but it's appropriate to just mention them now. So the Corokai village will provide 56 pods and will house up to 240 people. So they're progressively being filled. I think the entire site has now been handed over, and work is nearing completion on the Evans Head site, which will be caravans, but fixed infrastructure in place, and they will start to be filled by the end of this month. And we'll also have 153 caravans that have now been delivered to local homes in our mid-Richmond area, and majority of those throughout Woodburn. So I think there's some good results across, you know, Corokai, Evans and Woodburn. And they've obviously, you know, had to find sites that are, or solutions that are flood-free, hence why, you know, Evans Head is being used. And the advice is that they are prioritising local people to go into those villages.
Yeah, there was rumours going around that the Corokai pods were for Lismore people. That's not the case. Corokai people have priority. I think it's Baptist Care is taking management rights of the Corokai one, and the caravans aren't only in Woodburn, they're also in Broadwater and Riley's Hill and around those areas, and a few rural areas. So we're gradually getting our community back into some housing. So, what else was I going to say? Oh, and when you walk in the pods, you know, people lost everything. So they get all bedding, clothes dryers, washing machines, jugs, crockery, everything you need to be able to live your normal life, they are supplied for them. And the one pod has double bed, and the other one had 2 bedrooms and a real big living area that would cater for 4 people. Beautiful kitchens, TV out in the lounge room of one, and the other one had it in where you could see from the bed. So very comfortable, and yeah, so the community will, I think, be very grateful of it's finally happened.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr General Manager.
And I'll just go back to that White Cane Day, that tactiles, that was in the report to council about the grants we'd received a couple of meetings ago. No other questions? I'll put that motion, and all those in favour? Carried. Delegates' reports on page 8. 12.1, I'll move that. Seconder?
Second.
Councillor Humphreys. Any questions out of that Rouse ordinary meeting held on the 19th of October? I'll put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried. (12.2) on page 12. Delegates' reports, November 2022, Local Government New South Wales Conference. A mover, please. Councillor Deegan. Seconder.
I'll second, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Morrissey. Councillor Deegan.
Yes, so that's the first local government conference that I've attended. yeah, was really impressed by all the councils across the state coming together to advocate on important issues to state and federal government. So, yeah, found it all a fairly positive experience. I guess the highlight for me was Lake Macquarie Council, who provided significant support following the floods earlier this year, was able to catch up with the Mayor, General Manager and councillors and pass on thanks on behalf of the community for the support that they gave. Yeah, so, yeah, other than that, yeah, a lot of really important issues covered.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Morrison.
Councillor Deegan, the second last paragraph of the report, other themes of the conference included housing and homelessness, infrastructure, roads and transport, the environment and waste. Considering all the things we're getting sort of talked about with waste, was there anything that stuck out for you?
I guess from memory, the main discussions around that were the costs that that related to local government in having to manage the waste levy and all of the surrounding issues. In relation to the actual motions, I can't recall them. Yeah, but it was mostly focused on the cost.
Councillors, I had planned, along with Councillor Humphreys and the General Manager, to attend this conference. Unfortunately, there was flood warnings out. There was talk of the levy in Lismore could be breached again. On the Sunday morning when we were going to head down, we made the decision to stay home, as did the Lismore Mayor, and I hadn't been talking to him, but it was just coincidence. I felt that if something disastrous happened again, the Mayor and the General Manager and councillors need to be here on the ground. And I'm very pleased that nothing did occur. I took the punt, and but the General Manager and I, if you go back to on page 7, my attendances during those dates, the General Manager and I on that morning, on the Sunday, we had received a meeting notification at Woodburn, and we both attended that. And then the next 3 items, in those times I attended those consultation at Coracai, Woodburn and Casino. So in one way I was pleased I was here, because some of the information that was passed on CSIRO meetings I found very, very interesting on their wall displays, and also the meeting at Woodburn. You could feel there was a lot of anxiety around those areas, and there was people from Coracai, Broadwater and Woodburn at that meeting. I have actually talked to Steve Krieg, Mayor of Lismore, and he said the same was in his community over there. When the warning came out, you could feel people were really worried. So, yeah, unfortunately we couldn't attend, but that's how it is. And I just made that call, and I'll stand by staying home with the community. Councillor Deegan, did you want any other questions? Do you want to write a reply? I'll put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried. Matters determined without debate. Has any councillors got any items they'd like to call?
14.1.
Sorry? 14.1. Any others? No others? I'll call if you... No? I've got... Sorry? Yeah, do you want to call that? Any others? Councillors, I'll call the 15.1, 15.2, 15.5 and 16.1 because it is a planning matter. Any other items? So I need a motion to pull 14 for 14.3, 15.3, 15.4, 17 and 17.1. Can I get confirmation on that, please? Right? 14.3, 15.3, 15.4, 17 and 17.1. Oh, sorry. Yep, doubling up.
So there's 4 items.
Yep. Yep. Can I get a motion for them, please?
Mr Mayor.
Councillor Morrissey. Seconder. Councillor
Second.
Humphries. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Carried. So 14.1, I've declared an interest, so I'll be leaving the room, and I'll invite the Deputy Mayor to come and take the seat, please. Councillor Hayes called it.
Councillors, we have 14.1. Sorry, Mr Mayor. Councillor Hayes, you called it.
I did. I don't want to change the recommendation. I just want a couple of questions based around some of the information in there.
Second.
Thank you. The Resilient Homes program, has there been meetings in Lismore based around that yet? Have they had any meetings for the public to attend in any of the towns?
Yes, there has been a meeting in Lismore, one in, I think it was Mullumbimby. They had, the Northern Rivers Reconstruction Corporation had a stand at Primex for the 3 days of Primex. There will be meetings on the 29th of November in Coracai, I think it is, and then on the 5th of December in Woodburn and Broadwater. We've also encouraged them to, and I think they will be, filming a future session and then putting that on their website, so those people who are unable to make it during the day can view that in their own time, almost as a webinar. So I know you passed that feedback on, and I passed that on to the corporation when I met with them last week, and they said that great idea, and so their intention is to do that and get it on their website.
With the meetings that have happened to date, has there been anyone from our area that stuck their head in to find out any information that's forthcoming? Based around those 3 dot points there, the buyback options, the raising, or we got to wait for our own meetings?
Yeah, look, they were hard to get into. They filled very quickly. So we took the approach to let those people in those areas attend those sessions, and that we will attend, obviously the ones in our area. We'll make sure that we have staff representation there. Probably the key message for people with this program is get a flood property assessment program report done. If you haven't done that, and I've talked to a few people who still haven't done it, and they've had water through their properties, we've been saying it 4 months, get one done. Doesn't cost anything. You're not committed to anything, but it gives you the information that can inform your decision, and it also means that you will be eligible for the rate relief through Service New South Wales. So I just keep saying it. Get one of those done, get on the website, ring the phone number, book it in. Once they've assessed your property, it does take 2 to 3 months to get a report, but just get one done is the key message.
If you qualify for the rate relief, that means you've had it done, doesn't it?
I clarified that today because I've been getting that question. It doesn't trigger with Service New South Wales until a report has been received by the homeowner, and at that same point they then provide it to Service New South Wales, and that's the point at which councils then get advised and get a payment to cover that property's rates. So again, that's why people need to get these done so that they don't have to pay their rates. Obviously the report and anything in there to confirm flood inundation and otherwise is an important part of it as well from Service New South Wales perspective.
So because that's based on council finances and rates, can we advertise the fact that you need to get that done online and in our newsletter so that people know that that's what they need to do to be able to get that registration happening?
I'm pretty sure we have, but we can continue to include those messages, wherever we can, in the newsletters and Facebook posts along the way.
Just another item within that report, and we touched on it there before in the mayoral minutes, that the 56 pod housing up in Corrickey, they've got 240 people, and that's great. This council was huge in advocating to get caravans in Woodburn, and I'm glad we've done that. My quick figures here, I think the 153 vans provided across Woodburn, Broadwater. I'm thinking that it housed in excess of 600 people back in their own homes, and I think that's been a plus for those areas. I think that's a great outcome. I'd like to see what the costs are compared to a pod village at Corrickey that's going to have 56 pods, and we've got 153 vans out there. I think you find that the cost would be, per person would be a lot less to have the vans and the pods. Yeah. And the 34 vans now for Evans Head, was that always going to be caravans, or did they change their way of thinking there somewhere? Because pods started to come in there and then they disappeared, and then the vans appeared.
It may have had, but I think it was pretty early, the change, because in my recollection of the Housing Task Force sessions that I was involved in, the decision around caravans was fairly early in the process. So I think there may have been a point at which very early that it was pods, or they actually, at one point in time, they contacted us because they were looking for sites to store pods. So obviously while they're getting a site ready, they can't actually have the pods on that site. So they may have actually utilised the Evans Head site for a short period of time just to store some pods before they then put them onto their final destination. We identified a couple of options for Public Works Advisory who were managing it. They didn't end up using those options because they found some other solutions. That may have been one of them. So that might have been why you may have seen pods.
I think the caravans is a lot better option for Evans Head anyway. I think it looks quite good sitting there now if the van's there.
Well, I think that was part of their consideration, was it was consistent with the amenity and the use of that space. They were obviously, just wanting to keep that in mind as well. And I think, to be honest, all of ours have been really well accepted by the community. We haven't had much feedback at all. So our community's been very accepting of these, the need for these developments. So it's a good result.
Councillor Humphries, would you?
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. I just note on page 14 that so far in the budget implications, Council has received more than $20 million in grants, insurance payments and disaster recovery funding, with funding requests in excess of $100 million pending. And then over the next, there's just so much positive information in this report. I think it for anybody who reads it, those affected by the floods, they've got to know that council will. We're pledging to remain. We're there for them, and we will keep advocating. Through you, Mr Chair, I just thought I'd like you, Mr General Manager, to talk more about the Resilient Homes program and the consultation, the two consultation schedule for November and December, and the buybacks. And all those three options there, please.
Yeah, so those sessions are Broadwater and Woodburn on the 5th of December and Corrickey on the 29th. If anyone listening or watching wants more information on the dates of that, I'm pretty sure we've posted those, and we'll post them again in advance, but also just contact council and we'll advise you the specifics. And I think there's also a need to register for those sessions. So that is important. Get along to these sessions, ask questions, but probably the key, again, just reiterate that message, that property assessment program report is what the Reconstruction Corporation will be using to make decisions about which of the three options under this scheme your property is or meets the criteria for. So, for example, that assessment report will determine flood height levels and where the property was, and in particular whether it was a very high risk, whether that be to the level of inundation or the velocity of the flood. You know, obviously some properties that have actually been knocked off their piers, so that's part of the assessment, and that will inform whether the decision's been made for those certain areas to actually offer buybacks. I think another important message here, the message has been that these are all voluntary, but that option will be there for buybacks at a pre-flood valuation. The second level is to raise properties to particularly the livable areas above the flood levels, and there's $100,000 provided for that. And the third tier is up to $50,000 to assist those people who are retrofitting or plan to retrofit and repair their homes to use flood resilient materials, so that if this happens again, the property can be more easily washed out and re-inhabited. So that's the options, and again, just encourage people, go to those sessions or just call council and have a chat with our recovery team. We have a recovery team that are supporting affected residents every day of the week. I'd take that opportunity as well.
Thanks very much. And again, on the top of page 15, we were talking about housing, but there's been so much funding being spent, so much money being spent on emergency roadworks. They're stating there that 24 construction crews are currently working on repairs. We've got $5 million in insurance payments with restorations to our key community buildings and our sporting facilities, which includes repairs to the casino indoor sports stadium. I know there's a lot of interest in that actual centre, and then $7.4 million in government funding secured to support recovery and flood repairs for our community facilities throughout the Richmond Valley. So it certainly is really heartwarming to read all those positive. I know there's a long way to go, but it's very good to be able to read so much positive information in the report. Thank you very much.
Any other speakers? Councillor Deegan?
Firstly, like reading this report, you can see the incredible amount of work that the staff have put in to continuing to support the community around the recovery and rebuild. So I think it's really important to acknowledge the work that staff have put in. Through you, Mr Chair, the General Manager was mentioning around the building assessments and so forth. For people who may be listening who haven't had that assessment, what's the process? Who do they contact around that?
Just Google Flood Property Assessment Program. The program's run by a company called Johns Ling for the New South Wales Government. They have had a bus that has been in towns and villages across all areas. But if you Google, I think there's a registration form that you fill out. You then get contacted and they book in a visit, and the visit involves up to half a dozen people because you've got a building engineer, you've got electricians, you've got a couple of other disciplines, someone supporting them to start writing reports and the like. So they visit. It takes a good couple of hours depending on the damage to the property. In some cases probably longer than that, and that report does take, from what I've heard, can be up to 3 months for that report to come through. But people are seeing, in some communities, some demolitions of properties. They are being done based on those reports. But obviously these reports, again, that's an option that landowner has made. But the report will inform, other options, which can be that you do nothing. So it's really up to the landowner. Owners, but it's a really important piece of information that I'd encourage people to take the opportunity to get that done for nothing. So register, and they'll get in contact with you, or if you don't hear something once you've registered, make phone calls. I have to say one thing you hear plenty about sometimes when there's so much going on and there's so many people affected by this. You do need to advocate hard at times for people's own situations. So making phone calls, sending emails, push hard, and outcomes do come.
Councillor Deegan?
Yeah, thanks. For this next question, I possibly could have asked it during the Rouse update, but given Ms Johnson's questions and presentation earlier, which was very informative, through you, Mr Chair, maybe the General Manager or possibly Councillor Humphries as a delegate to Rouse, is there any update on the progress of the Bunga levy, funding sources and so forth?
Councillor Humphries?
Thank you for the question. I'm afraid that I'm not going to be very helpful. I know that the Mayor contacted the General Manager to ask about that, as it does come up at quite a number of our meetings, but without myself contacting him, I'd rather take it on notice and bring it back to you.
I think that's what I'd certainly suggest is that we can contact the General Manager at Rouse. I know there has been actions, there has been emergency works done. Anyone who's driven along Bunga and Whipperoo Road and you look across to where the levee was breached, there is large, whitish looking rock and other material there that from my observation looks like it's at a similar level to what the levee has been, but obviously from the information that Ms Johnson has provided tonight, there's clearly weaknesses along that levee. I'm sure Rouse are aware of it, and I'm happy to have a chat to Phil Rudd. I'm sure they're in probably a similar process to us with disaster recovery funding arrangements, and it's potentially, whether it's recovery or is it betterment, some of the ideas that Ms Johnson has put forward is around betterment, and there's separate funds for that. Rouse may be applying for that, so I think it's appropriate that we ask that question. And I'll certainly suggest that the team at Rouse have a look at what was what Ms Johnson said tonight, and also the presentation, so we can pass that on to them and get some feedback and bring it back to you.
If I could just speak once again, we actually have a workshop tomorrow, and I'm quite positive it's something that Councillor Mustoe and I will speak with the General Manager about.
Anyone else? You want to close, Councillor?
I'll
Ho?
close if I'm right.
Yeah.
The Resilient Homes program, the guts of this paper here, it mind boggles. They're having 45-minute meetings. There's going to be people there want 1,000 questions. Some of the answers, some of the things that just come to mind is how they're going to determine who gets what. What is this retrofit repair works? If you're insured and you're underinsured, do you get a top up? If you've done the work, do you get the money back? What happens to the land when they buy back a house? There's so many variables in this thing. It's going to be bigger than Ben Hur, and the money's going to get, well, in my opinion, the money's going to get chewed up before they get off the ground. It's just there's so much stuff there that just, people want answers for, and in a 45-minute meeting, there's not going to be any answers. There's got to be something, a publication put out with a list of rules and regulations as to how you go about it. And it's just not going to work unless that's done. Hopefully that's what comes out of it. Thank you.
Okay, put that motion forward. All those in favour? Thank you. Welcome back.
(14.2), page 17. Councillor McGillan.
Thank you. Okay, my question regarding this is 14.2 on page 20 regarding the...
Could you get a mover and a seconder, please?
Oh, beg your pardon.
Second.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Thank you. Apologies.
Councillor?
Okay, page 20 of item 14.2. I was just got the question about the choice of the Peterson quarry and beg your pardon, oh yes it is, I beg your pardon, sorry folks. Okay, so the Peterson quarry as a Corokai to be used as a waste facility area. How will this work? Will it be a like the dumping the system that they have at Casino and at Evans Head where it's all segregated, or will it be the leftover residue of other waste facilities? Will it be the actual waste, or will it be the rubbish that is dumped? These are the questions I've got. I'm just sort of concerned about, will it be covered so we won't have the waste, the scavenger birds that usually hang around with those sort of areas, and if there'll be any odour as the wind blows, that sort of thing, and that's just really what I was concerned about.
Just quickly, before I ask the General Manager to respond, this is very, very early, just an investigation. It's like all the other options that we've looked at. That's only another alternative. Hopefully that would never have to eventuate, because it'd be burying waste. We need to get better than that. But just one thing is, any waste that is buried under the EPA guidelines, like here in Casino, it has to be covered daily. But I'll pass over to the General Manager to respond.
Councillor McGillen, look, they're all good questions, because I'm sure anyone who's read this report who lives nearby will be wondering the same things. But any landfill, there's a lot of restrictions and requirements put in place under an environmental pollution licence issued by the EPA to deal with those sorts of things. And as the Mayor said, on a day where you operate a landfill, where you put residual waste into a landfill, it then has to have a cover of virgin material over the top of it each day, and for those reasons, so that there's no odour, so that it's not birds and other impacts. So it's very early days. At this stage, really it's an early conversation with the current lessee that they're looking to the longer term future. Obviously it's still got quite a life left as a quarry, but with waste facilities you do need to start your planning early. It takes time. So again, it's about, we're at the point, it's an option. And, as the report says, we're keeping all of the options on the table, or we're exploring what options are available. But again, the preference, and I think this is where we need to move forward in New South Wales, is to not bury waste. It doesn't generate good outcomes. So we need to find something better, and hopefully we can achieve that. But obviously anything that did happen in Corokai would need to go through significant development, assessment and approval processes that would include significant consultation with that community. We're nowhere near that point. We're really at the, is it an option stage? Is it feasible? What would it require? So a long way to go on that one. But good questions to have in mind.
Thank you. Thank you.
And there would be very stringent environmental guidelines, but yes, it's many, many years away. Yep. Councillor Hayes.
Just a comment around, in the recommendation number 3, it says pauses its active investigation into an energy from waste facility for the Richmond Valley while the Park Special Activation Precinct energy from waste proposal proceeds and monitors progress and community reactions and outcomes. I think that's a great thing, that we can sit back and watch parks and just see what happens with that over the next few years, and just sit tight on it. I reckon that's a good result for that one, just so we can monitor what's going on and maybe get some answers out of it. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Deegan.
Yeah, I guess so. Firstly, like state and federal governments from both sides have really, I guess, dropped the ball on the issue of waste over a number of decades, and there hasn't been much forward planning. But I do want to, I guess, note that Richmond Valley has actually taken the lead in some of these areas and looking at those different options while perhaps other levels of government haven't done that, so I think that's important. Not all of the options are palatable to everybody, and that's been noted before. I certainly agree with the idea of pausing the investigations into waste to energy, and yeah, certainly agree with the option of continuing investigations into the options around organic waste and recyclables and so forth. Yeah, and I think at some point in the future we should look at whether it's lobbying or investigations with state and federal government about really putting some of the pressure back on the manufacturers of this waste. Councils don't produce waste but have to manage it. So if there's a way that we can look at the manufacturers maybe paying some of these levies that councils and ultimately ratepayers have to pay, I think they're options that could be considered in the future. But yes, support the recommendations.
Councillor Humphries.
Mr Mayor, I'd just like to make a comment further to, I'm thinking your first name and not your last one, Councillor Deegan's statement about well, particularly the New South Wales government having dropped the ball. I note in the letter that Council sent to IPART about their domestic waste management charges, one of the impacts of the waste levy, it says here that, well, it started in 2009 and it was $10 per tonne. It's now 84.10, and that's a 741% increase. But more to the point, the Richmond Valley Council has paid $6.45 million in waste levy charges, and it's received $974,000 in waste and recycling grant payments and programs. So that's $6.45 million out and $974,000 back in. And that paragraph, it ends saying this is a poor return by any business standard. Over the page, it just reminds us that Richmond Valley Council's current operating expenses for domestic waste management are $600.98 million per year. I particularly, actually, this is a really powerful, another really powerful letter going out, and such an important letter to go out when all councils are struggling with the cost of waste, let alone what do we do with it. The letter finishes with the suggestion that a significantly higher level of reinvestment of waste levy funds by the New South Wales government to support councils to be innovative and identify and develop new solutions would be a recommendation IPART needs to seriously consider. So I definitely support that. There are lots of areas in the letter that I support. It's truly wonderful how the new technologies, I'm going now to the expressions of interest that we received, truly wonderful to see how many more technologies have been discovered there, and how council, if we just take our time and we can work through all of those options. And most certainly, there's a paragraph about, taking our time. We've actually, although we were called on as, having a precinct, we've actually never been in that big a hurry that we can't wait to see what happens with parks. I guess the urgency has been that the waste and the water and the precinct and the housing, everything's sort of come upon us within a few years, but we certainly have time to take the same measured approach that we take with everything. Do fact-finding and data finding, and most definitely monitor what happens with parks and learn while still investigating all the other options that might come to the fore. Thank you for the report. It's, again, a very good report.
Any other speakers? Councillors, I agree with all of the comments that's been around the table. And Australia relied on shipping our waste to third world countries. And some of us are supposed to be getting, besides China, but other third world countries, and it was supposed to be getting recycled. But it sat over there in piles, and there's evidence that it was taken out to ocean, into sea, and just dumped. So Australia did not take care of its own waste. When the swordfish policy in China stopped, then Malaysia shut it down, all of a sudden we had to, and the governments were cut short. Currently we are sending our waste to Queensland, but it's time where we have to start looking at, and previous council realise this, of our own waste. And the EU countries have stopped burying waste. It is a huge contributor to climate change, and we have to start following those guidelines and look at alternatives. And with the expressions of interest, we've got some good options there. And to me, where I thought we would be, we've never ever said, council has never said we're going to build an energy from waste. There are some misleading comments out there that council was, especially around local government elections. That has never been the case. We have said we will explore options of any waste stream disposal we could find, including energy from waste, and then we will pick what is best for our community. And that's where we are doing this today, sitting here looking forward, and I think it's very commendable to Richmond Valley Council, and especially the staff, who have taken the responsibility of looking after our waste, because there's other councils not doing that. So I'm happy with the recommendation. I'm very pleased with it. And I must say that the precinct, the job precinct, is not reliant, it's been put out there many times, on an energy from waste. So if there's no energy from waste, the job precinct will still happen. Also, it has been looked at, Councillor Deegan mentioned about a levy on producers. That's been looked at before, but all that does is the producer puts the prices up of the product, so in the end the consumer pays. So, yeah, so I 100% agree with it, the recommendation, and when we monitor and investigate all these options that come into the expression of interest, I look forward to having a further discussion and try to find a real positive outcome for our waste stream. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, not to speak again, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question through you to the General Manager? There's a very important paragraph on the bottom of 19 I'd just like a comment on, thank you, about the residual waste expected to be generated by the North Coast.
Yes, that it says that it's 100,000 on the North Coast. Yeah, no, so that paragraph, I suppose, is highlighting that for traditional energy from waste facilities, so when I say traditional, I mean the larger ones, which are what's currently being built in Western Australia, they require a feedstock of at least 300,000 tonnes per annum. The North Coast, with the work that we've done, residual waste, it's around 100,000 tonnes available. So those facilities at this point in time would need to find another couple of 100,000 tonnes of residual waste from other streams other than from councils. Obviously the council component would rely on all of those councils agreeing that this is the place where they want to put their residual waste as well. So there is some emerging technology aimed at smaller amounts of tonnage, but they don't have the same track record as the larger facilities, so they would need to go through a more rigorous process with the EPA. The EPA approval requirements, which are in line with the Energy from Waste policy statement, which is based on the Chief Scientist's work, has requirements to have a pilot facility or a prototype facility that they can point to and say this facility has operated for at least a 2-year period and here's its performance standards. This is what has the standards that it has met, and it would need to meet those strict requirements that are again in place set by the chief scientist's work. So that's there. So the new technology is probably more likely what might fit on the north coast, but it's a few years away anyway. So that's why we added that section as well.
Thank you very much.
I have a question. On page 20, progress on the parks proposal, halfway through that paragraph, the end of the first paragraph, it mentions about the state election in March. Has there been any, Mr General Manager, has been any notification or hint what, if there was a change of government, what waste disposal would they favour, or?
Oh, look, I couldn't be conclusive on that. I think, there's no, at this point in time, I don't think there's election commitments from any of the parties. So I'm not aware one way or the other. I'm sure it would, it may be an issue that they look at. One of the questions that generally gets asked on that is, if it's prohibited everywhere else in New South Wales, why is it prohibited in just these 4 areas? So obviously that's something that whichever government gets in after March, they might turn their mind to whether that's the right way of doing this, if they're of the view that energy from waste continues to be part of the New South Wales government's solutions under the circular economy, which is how it currently stands. So I'm sure there'll be, either way, whatever happens, a bit of a review of where this area is up to, and I'm sure we'd potentially suggest that that's a good thing to do so that we get some clarity. And, as our submission in the attached to this report makes clear, is that we did not support just the way this regulation was written. It's written as a prohibition. Of course people are going to pick that up and go, this is nasty. Why is this happening? Wasn't a sensible approach, but that was the approach they took. And where, I suppose, have been dealing with the results of that being, stigmatising energy from waste facilities.
Is there a proposal or any thought of, after the election, whether there be a change in government or the same, that we approach the government of the day and ask them, we've got a list on page 19, what their thoughts are on these, because I'd hate to be doing all these studies and then the government say, oh no, you're not allowed to do that. I just think we need to
I think it'd be a good approach. I think it's another reason why it's why we've recommended this, or made this recommendation with this report, is we just think that with everything else that we are dealing with and have priorities at the moment, it makes sense to pause our resource effort in this area. Get through, obviously election cycles can create uncertainty. Get through that. Get a clear picture of whatever the new government is, clear policy intent, and then we move forward with that in mind. I think there will also be the opportunity for us to potentially make some follow-on submissions with some of the suggestions that are in this report, whether it be around the waste levy or whether it be around education or voluntary planning agreements. We can put there's a fair bit of thought gone into this issue, and we can make an early submission post March 23.
Yep. Any other speakers? Councillor McGillen to close? No? All right. I'll put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried. I think our next item is 15.1, is that correct? Page 24, organisation service financial statements. I'll move that. Seconder, Councillor Deegan. Councillors, as the auditor mentioned, it's pretty good figures, and I just would like to congratulate our staff, at, which he said they put it together, and it's, I think, for what we've been through, it's been a good outcome. So I'd like General Manager to pass that on to our finance team, if you could, please. But yeah, our ratios, I think they're very sound outcome for that, and I'm very impressed with on page 28 the asset maintenance ratio. I think if you're putting the getting the cash investments put away to be able to renew your infrastructure, I think that's a real positive for the future for incoming councils and the residents. So that's all I really wanted to say, was thank the staff for their effort in doing that, and yeah, I'm very happy with that outcome. Any other speakers? Put that motion then. Carried. Page 31, 15.2, we have a presentation from Director Gator. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks for that, Ian. I took the other one and then left it in there. I nearly left my glasses.
Thanks, Jules. So the quarterly budget review for the end of September. We've had a just over $8 million increase in our total income, which brings it up to just over $99 million. And we've had an increase in our expenses from continuing operations of $4.337 million, which now takes that to $74.161 million. This gives us an operating result from continuing operations of $25 million, up from $21 million, and an operating result before capital grants and contributions. It's improved from a $1.848 million deficit to a $471,000 surplus, which is a good result. To fund all this, we'll be spending $9.49 million, in reserve funding, and our unrestricted cash has increased by just over $29,000 to $287,000. So the main changes for income and expenditure. In the waste management area, we've had an increase of income and expenditure of $2.7 million, and this is a result of the work undertaken by council on behalf of Public Works for the flood waste cleanup. So we went and got the job done and then claimed the expenses back. Under governance, we've had the second part of our insurance payment from Civic Risk Mutual. The full insurance payment was $5 million, and we've had the second part, which was $3 million, come into the budget in this quarter. And in the roads area, we've had a $716,000 increase in operating expenditure, and that's due to restoration works being undertaken from the February flood, and that money will be claimed back under the disaster recovery funding arrangements. In relation to capital works, like all other industries, we're being impacted by supply constraints and contractor availability. That's expected to continue for at least the rest of this financial year. Things aren't improving at this stage. Along with persistent wet weather, that's impacted the commencement of some of our capital works projects. So what we've done, because we had the large number of carryovers from last financial year, we've done a full review of the capital works program, and the net increase, including carryovers, is $2.95 million. So now we have a capital works program of $53.5 million. the major changes in the capital works. So in the tourism area, we've got a $3.5 million decrease for the Northern Rivers Rail Trail project. That project has hit some weather issues, so that money will go into next year's budget, and the project, I believe, is still planned to be finished next year. There was a fair bit of it. Is that right, Ben? Yep. So timing-wise, it still should be finished next year, even though that money's been transferred from this year into next year. Under building and maintaining roads, we've got an increase of 2.8 million, largely due to carryovers, and a lot of those projects have been affected by wet weather and contractor availability. We've also had a few projects affected by the increase in prices of materials, so we've had to delay the commencement of some projects, and we're actually going back and revising the scope of works on those ones. Under sports grounds, parks and facilities, we've got a $302,000 increase in the casino showground upgrade, $768,000 been allocated to Collie Park, Mid-Richmond recreational spaces and Queen Elizabeth Park upgrades from the local government recovery grants, and $334,000 in grant funding for the Barker Street green space project. Under community centres and halls, $583,000 in carryovers for the Ratville Common project, and that was due to flooding. Under swimming pools, we've got $760,000 allocated towards upgrades at the Casino, Coraki and Woodburn swimming pools. Sewage services, we've got $1.2 million increase in capital expenditure, and that was under the New South Wales Regional Housing Fund towards the South Casino Sewage Transfer Station, which was due to flooding as well. So in conclusion, the major changes during the quarterly review are largely due to additional grant funding being approved, natural disaster funding and carryover works. Following the inclusion of carryover works, a comprehensive review of the capital works program has been undertaken, and that now totals $53.5 million. There is still a risk that the delivery of capital works program will be further impacted by unprecedented weather and the availability of contractors and supply chain issues. Any impacts will be monitored and budgets will be adjusted accordingly in future quarterly reviews and monthly budget adjustment reports. And in summary, Council's projected financial position at the end of the year remains satisfactory. Is there any questions?
Any questions? All right, we're page 31. I'll move it. I think I called it. And the seconder, please.
Second.
Councillor Hayes. Any comments? Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Gaydon. I'll put that motion, then all those in favour? Carried. 15.5, page 41. I think I call that. I'll move that. And a seconder, please.
Second.
Councillor Morrissey. Councillors, the annual report, I feel for a community that's been recovering from the drought, bushfires, going through COVID, and then the impact of the devastating floods. I think it's a great outcome. It's been a hard, not only last 12 months, which the report covers, but it's been a hard 5 years or so for our community, or 4 years for our community. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank all the staff of Richmond Valley Council and councillors for what we've done for our community. And I believe we have delivered what our community expects and what they deserve. And in saying that, we have a wonderful community. We've seen them really come together through these devastations that I've talked about, natural disasters and COVID and that, what I've spoke about earlier. And some people have done it really tough in our community, and it really gives me I'm proud to say that this organisation has delivered a great outcome and an annual report for them. So I feel we're delivering on what we're elected to do. And it's not only this council sitting in this room, it's a previous council that was changed over in December. So thank you to them, and thank you to everyone in the room and all our staff. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor
Steve, I think
Morrissey.
you said it quite well.
Any other? I'll put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. (16.1), page 43. Community Service Delivery, Richmond Valley Growth Management Strategy and Casino Place Plan. I call that due to be a planning matter, and I'll move that recommendation. Seconder,
I'll second
Councillor
Steve.
Morrissey. Councillors, we've had a few presentations on this and a bit of knowledge, and had the opportunity to go over it, but to me now it's up to the community. They'll get right through till February, which gives them a good long time to have a look at it and give us feedback and their comments on this plan. So, as I said, I mainly called it because it's a requirement, it's a planning issue, and I haven't got anything else to say, but I'm looking forward to the feedback in February. Any other speakers? No, I'll put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried. (17.1). I think I called that one too, did I? Yep. Seconder?
Second.
Councillors, only to say that this is starting to really get underway now. There's a lot of action happening out there, especially in this week, and I think it's going to be. I'm getting a few inquiries about what can be done out there and in the future, so I'm excited over that, and I think it's going to be a great draw card for not only Casino or the Richmond Valley, but the whole region. I think it's going to be an outstanding venue, and I think it'll be a lot of other projects that council does undertake, and it's going to get a lot of use in the future. So I just wanted to let you know that there is a lot happening out there just recently. So, I don't know if Mr. General Manager wants to give us an update on where we're up to at this date.
So yeah, works as scheduled commenced this week with demolition of the stable facilities. We've obviously been busy doing the other work. Sand tracks almost complete, rails in, cutting yards done and being used for the rodeo at the show. So plenty of work's happening, plenty to go. And we're in regular communication with those who are affected by this. Obviously it will restrict activities for the next 12-18 months, but where we can we will still enable events to occur where that is possible, but obviously the priorities are getting the project done to meet the required time frames and keeping people safe. So hence, needing to limit the activities on the site. But yeah, it's underway, which is a good thing. Getting on with the job.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Humphries.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just on page 48, I found it very thought-provoking. We're talking about maybe a requirement to change the human resource allocation from council to take care of the new business out there. And the last one I find very interesting, that council perhaps combines the showground management element with an existing business unit or other similar facilities. For example, the showground might be considered as part of a portfolio with the aerodrome, the Northern Rivers Rail Trail, swimming pools and the quarry. And the other very interesting, another option may be to combine it with the NRLX as part of the Richmond Valley agricultural enterprise. So there's three very, very interesting options there. So it'd be good to follow that process and see what will work best for that area, that site.
Yeah, I think it's important, as we've lived it with the NRLX, that when you build something new, expectations rise, costs of maintaining it do rise. So our challenge will be with the showground that the same will apply. However, we don't have the same market rolling through there on a weekly basis. And obviously we do have it being used by community groups who, you know, we're part of our role as council is to support those sorts of activities. So it's a matter of how we can identify, you know, whether it be new endeavours, new events. Obviously, one of the key targets is to increase the number of racehorse trainers that want to come and train in Casino. And I think with some of the new facilities that are there and the fact that we can provide a track that is certainly dries out much quicker than those other ones across the Northern Rivers, that it may get more use. So yeah, it'll be, and that's why I think we need to put some thought into that. We've got some time while we build this to put our resource structures in place, identify how we can get some more revenue streams so that we can continue to provide this for community groups, but attract others who are in a position to pay a bit more to use a high quality facility.
Any other speakers? Put the motion in. All those in favour? Carried. Page 49, general business is nil. Item 18. And page item 19, matters for information. Could I get a mover, please?
Move it there.
Councillor Morrissey, seconder. Councillor McGillan. Has any councillor got any business in matters for information? Councillors, I'd just like to mention item 19.2, Code of Conduct Complaint Statistics, on page 58. I'm usually when you see a zero in most things, you're not real happy, but I'm very, very pleased to say that once again Richmond Valley hasn't had any complaints for their councillors or general manager, and I think it's as I mentioned earlier, this also includes the previous council before the election, so it's really great as mayor to work with a council that's very cohesive and respects each other's opinions and gets on well. And I see some other shenanigans in other councils, and I think I'm glad I'm not the mayor at those. So thank you to councillors for being so pleasant and working together, and it's the benefit from that is our community. That's who gets the benefit out of that, because we work together all in this. We may not agree on everything, but when the decision's made, we work to achieve what the decision is. So thank you again. Any other items for any councillors? So back to the recommendation on page 49. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Carried. Item 20 on page 72. We don't have a motion for that, do we? No. And Question 21, questions for the next meeting? In writing? I'll take that as an... Councillor Hayes?
On 20.1, can I just make a couple of comments?
On 20.1, righto, yep.
My question on notice. I thank the General Manager for the answer and all the information. And I just, by the figures that they're in there, no doubt you all would have read them. Do I read it right if the meatworks were pushed up to around the $2.20 with their water, that the rest of the council area would also be paying $2.20 instead of the current $2.88?
Thanks. Councillor McGillen's,
Could you turn your light off, please?
just turn your light off. Yeah, you're good. We only have 3 work at one time. Yes, so that table on the top of page 73 was basically a scenario that was run on those as per the question. So it was on the scenario where the total revenue remained the same if you change the prices. So yeah, you're right. So it would be at the point where the co-op price was $2.16, that would enable the residential price to drop down to the $2.27.
So if everybody knew about that, it'd be pretty inviting, wouldn't it? If your water rates are going to drop from $2.88 to back to $2.20.
Anyone likes fees going downwards.
Yeah, and back there on page 72, it says theoretically, I can't pronounce that, charging the NCMC more for its share of water consumption could translate to cheaper water consumption prices for other customers, which makes sense. However, council will need to offset this against the possibility that providing cheaper water for residential and commercial customers may encourage them to consume more, thus increasing annual supply costs and environmental impacts. I think the state of the environment these days, like, I don't think anyone intentionally wastes water. I don't think that'd occur. But that's just my opinion. Yeah.
I suppose it is a factor, and it was actually a driver for the reforms of water, and went back when prices did increase significantly, which was around the time when this agreement needed to be negotiated, because prices were required to go up. And I think 2-part pricing was brought in as well, which is both the access charge and your consumption charge. And in our case, once you get to consumption of 200 kilolitres per annum, you pay a premium on top of that, and that is to discourage high water usage, particularly in a residential setting.
I assume that'd stay in place anyway. So if you use your 200 kilolitres, you've always got the option to increase that too, I suppose, to stop that water wastage.
These options are all there. It's a matter of making sure that it's in line with, I suppose, our business plans for our water business, any compliance requirements we have under the Local Government Act, but also obviously, it's obviously a challenge to negotiate an outcome with a big user who's had a certain price for a long period of time. So there'll be some work required there too.
So next question, if a notice of motion was to come to council to increase the food co-op's water charges, what implications would that have on their standing agreement that we've got with them? Would we be able to work through it, or is it something that can't be done?
The advice we have to date is it's something that we're in a position to negotiate. But yes, it would require a notice of motion for us to go forward at this point, although it is something that potentially we can discuss at a workshop, and obviously start some conversations with the co-op if that's a direction that council is looking to go.
So maybe some information at the next workshop based around that before we go any further with it.
And obviously any changes to any charges need to be advertised in our draft revenue policy, which generally goes out in May. So it'll all feed into that forward planning.
Councillor Deegan?
Yeah, just continuing on with some of the comments from Councillor Hayes. So on the assumption, if residential water costs were to decrease, it could increase water usage. I guess you could say the balance is if a commercial enterprise's water fees increased, it might actually reduce the amount of water that they use too. So it could potentially balance each other out.
It's a fair point. If there was a significant increase, it would put more incentive on any large user to make sure they are doing everything they can to reduce their consumption.
Water is a very strange product. Councils and water authorities spend a lot of money producing it and then tell people not to use it. It's fact. Spend money, actually Rouse spends money on people telling them not to use their product. Try to educate people not to use it. But it's a good thing for the environment, but it is a very strange animal. Any others on 20.1? 21, questions for the next meeting in writing. Any questions? No? That's it. There's no closed council, so I'll close the meeting and wish everyone a safe trip home. Thank you. And the gallery, thank you for your attendance.